G'day there, welcome to Victory. My name is Matt Fradd. You might know me from my other channel at Pints with Aquinas. This is a separate channel called Victory, and it exists to help people find victory from pornography and freedom from the wounds that it inflicts. If you haven't yet subscribed, please be sure to do that. We've got a ton of content coming out every week, and every month we release a really highly produced story of somebody who found themselves immersed in pornography and then found freedom from it. So I was interviewing George Farmer yesterday, and George Farmer is married to Candace Owens on the Daily Wire, and George told me that recently at a Backstage they discussed pornography. Now, I haven't watched this episode yet, but I've downloaded the video and I've found out where they began speaking about pornography, so what I wanted to do is just watch it fresh with you all and see if we can offer some commentary.
We notably got into the discussion about our culture's desensitization to porn. Like, my husband does not have social media. He's not on Instagram. He's not on even Twitter, but he says everything is porn. We just don't realize it. So,
whoa, such a great point. I mean, not everything is porn, clearly, that's hyperbolic, but as pornography has proliferated and become more and more ubiquitous, we're changing the definition of porn. What we once called hardcore porn, perhaps we now call softcore porn. What we once called softcore porn, we don't call porn at all. What is it that we mean when we talk about pornography? I like to define pornography just very quickly as material which depicts erotic behavior which is intended to sexually arouse. And you might add to that definition, or, for the most part, has that effect. This is why you could say that 50 Shades of Stupid is pornographic. This is why you could say that many images that women, and I'm sure men as well, but I'm sure it's mainly women on Instagram, are posting of themselves could be considered pornographic under that definition. Some people have a problem with this. They want to say, well, if you define pornography too broadly, perhaps that this would somehow include naked art, and I think that's a reasonable objection or a reasonable concern. And I don't want to get into a whole discussion on the difference between porn and naked art here, but I would say at least this much, that whatever you might say the differences are, art, at the end of the day, isn't created for the sake of masturbation, and pornography, at the end of the day, isn't created for the sake of beauty.
when you open Instagram, it's just girls with their butts in your faces, their boobs in your faces, and it's these same women that will cry out and use the hashtag #MeToo and Time's Up. And it's like, you want men to treat you with more respect than you treat yourselves. And I talked a little bit about on my show today, it's 5 days a week, Candace Owens, 5 days a week.
Daily Wire Plus.
But you're seeing more and more of that where people somehow separate themselves, like their virtual character. It's almost like a game, like it's like an avatar. They're like, oh, well, it's totally fine that I'm online and I have my boobs out and my breasts out, but I really can't stand to see that men are objectifying women in society.
We do make this sharp distinction between online behavior and offline behavior, and I don't think it's a warranted distinction. What happens online isn't less real necessarily than what happens offline. I mean, imagine, and we have many instances of this, a teenage girl texts her boyfriend a naked image of herself and trusts that he will keep it private, and then he uploads it to Facebook, and that thing gets tons of views and tons of shares, right? Before Facebook notices and hopefully takes it down. And you think, okay, it's a stupid idea for a teenage girl to get naked before her boyfriend, right? Bad idea, don't do it. But is what just happened online less bad? No, it's potentially far more catastrophic. And I think parents need to make this, they need to understand this as well. What happens online is not less real than what happens offline. And if we would just make that distinction, we would see that we need our children to give us an account of their online behavior, you know? Like if a teenage or a child says, I want to go sleep at this person's house, the parent is going to say, well, who is it? What are you going to be doing? What are you going to be watching, if anything? When are you going to be home? Do I know their parents? Like, there's going to be a slew of questions that are going to be asked there, and they should be asked. But if a child goes online and starts watching pornographic content, I think very often, even though a parent might not be explicit about this, they somehow justify it by saying, well, it's just online, and we got to stop doing that.
Lost respect for ourselves, and yet we think that we can then demand respect in other fields and in other categories. And I don't think it really works.
You know what, I was just going back through, and I was turned on to this by Edmund Smirk, one of my favorite pseudonymous Twitter accounts. There was a clip of Catherine McKinnon, a radical feminist from 1993, and she's arguing with conservatives And she's saying, you guys are too weak on porn. And she says, if you
Yep, quoted her a bunch in my book, The Porn Myth.
were sitting in a room and you heard a lady get knocked around the walls in the other room, you would run out your door, you'd knock down, you might call the police. But because you're seeing it on a screen or you're reading it in a newspaper, or not a newspaper, in a magazine, you think it's totally fine. And it's this separation because it seems disembodied because we're living in this virtual world.
That's right, the virtual world.
But the things you do in the virtual world have moral qualities as well. You are still doing them, even if you're doing them in the...
Like, imagine this, right? Imagine if somebody's like totally okay with porn, but hopefully is totally against racism, right? How might you argue about how pornography affects our offline behavior? Well, imagine if you said something like this. Imagine if you said to them, okay, you're against racism, I hope. And they said, yes, definitely. Okay, what if your friend found some dark hole of the internet where people posted videos that made fun of some different race of people? And you confronted them about this. And suppose they said to you, oh no, this isn't real. This just helps me kind of relax at the end of the day. It's not, this doesn't affect how I treat those people. It's just for fun. You would rightly tell this person that they're out of their mind. Yeah. Likewise, if a person is going to watch pornography, which in and of itself is an intrinsic evil, and then think that this doesn't somehow affect their offline behavior, how they view sex, how they view their sexual relationships, how they view themselves, it's nuts. It's rubbish.
Quiet of your room with the blinds
This is
down.
one of the big arguments against feminism from the left when it started out. Guys like Norman Mailer were saying they're going to bring back ultimately going to bring back the Victorian era. I remember even as a kid thinking, would that be bad, really? Is that really a bad thing?
Got to comment on that, because I think the thing we really want to avoid is these pendulum swings. I mean, they tell me that there was a point in history where the sight of a woman's ankle would cause scandal. I don't know about you, but that's not a place I want to live in. But now look at the sexual revolution, this insane thing unfolding before our eyes in our culture. This may be the response to that, and what we don't want is another pendulum swing to the covering of the ankles, as it were. I mean, I know that he's being funny here to make a point, and fair enough. I think it would be a better thing, but it wouldn't be the thing we're after. The human person is good, and we can look at the person and see them as such, see them as a person who has intrinsic dignity, not a dignity given to them by government, not a dignity based on their abilities, but a dignity in virtue of the fact that they are a human being, the member of a rational kind. And so I think they touched upon this. I don't know if they're going to go into this anymore, but this idea that, well, a woman shouldn't dress provocatively, act sexually provocatively, and then get all bent out of shape when men don't treat her with respect. I think that's exactly right. Like, I think that is right. I mean, we are our brother's keeper. So, like, if you're a woman who dresses immodestly and a man tells you that, and they say, like, this is a problem for me, like, that, out of charity, that should concern you. You shouldn't want to lead your brother into sin. Now, a man can be so warped by pornography that a woman may be dressing in a perfectly modest manner, and yet he complains that she isn't. So no matter what a woman wears, it's possible that a man objectify her and see her as a sexual object. But that doesn't mean that women aren't responsible for dressing modestly. And I love the way Jason Everett talks about modesty. This is the way I've tried to talk to my kids about it. That modesty involves veiling that which demands the reverence. So many women on their wedding day will wear a veil. Why? Is it because they're so hideous that they need to cover it up? No, it's because they are sacred and they ought to be treated as such. And so when a woman chooses not to show her midriff, when she chooses not to wear pants with thousands of holes in them, or shorts where you can see the bottom of her bottom, this isn't because she thinks her body's bad. It's because she's come to an awareness that her body is good. And this is, I think this is the ticket. This is how we should think of modesty.
No, because of course, you're absolutely right about this. One of the reasons the culture is in such a slump is because no one can define what a good man is. And it's almost impossible to define what a good man is if you can't define what a good woman is.
That's
and
exactly
if you define what a good woman is,
or what a woman is at all.
Yeah. But certainly what a good one is, and if you define what a good woman is, you have violated a very, very central tenet of the law.
I noticed that on Daily Wire when we did the live at the Ryman Center, a lot of the comments were, they really wanted us to kind of expand on the marriage discussion and what makes for a good marriage. And in going back to this idea of like what a good woman is, I was covering today, and it's rather innocuous, but Emma Ratajkowski is getting divorced, right? And she's sort of gloriously leaked to the press that it's because her husband has cheated on her, right? You know, Emily Ratajkowski,
Emily, yeah.
you know, she's naked all the time. I mean, for bizarre things. Like she's like, I'm protesting Brett Kavanaugh. My top's off. Why? Nobody knows, right? Nobody knows. But we've seen her naked a million times.
One of my
since
favorite
she,
actresses.
since she
You love her
appeared
work.
on the scene in Blurred Lines, Robin
Right.
Thicke's video, which was just full pornography. And it's amazing to me that she, you know, calls him a dog, or somebody anonymous has said he's a complete dog and he cheated on her and she moved out. And I thought to myself, have you not been cheating on him? Like, is your virtual character somehow different?
Yeah.
You
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to live in a way that we push the blame onto other people around us. Like a man should never, right, blame his wife, let's say, for his pornography use. Right? Like, so maybe the wife is this horrible, let's just kind of think of extreme examples here, right? Like this horrible person, right, who bears her breasts on whatever she's talking about, right? Well, that in no way gives a man the right to then go and commit adultery or to look at pornography or anything like that. And just as it's wrong for the man to point to the woman and say, you're the problem, women also have to take responsibility and not point to the man and say, well, it's because of him.
are quite literally, would you do this in the real world, right? You're online, you've got your boobs out, you've got your butt out. Would you in the real world sit in a room full of men and put your boobs out and put your butt out? But there seems to be this mental detachment for women where they go, I know that I can be this tremendous act of infidelity in the universe of being online on Instagram and on Facebook is okay.
Yes.
It's not.
Well, it's this
okay?
ultimate-
Yes. No, I mean, she's exactly right. I love Candace Owens so much. Yeah, this is an act of infidelity. It really, really is. And again, just like pornography has become narrowed to the point that, well, unless it's on Pornhub, it's not pornography. You know, well, if it's on HBO, it can't be pornography. It's like infidelity has taken that shape as well. Like, unless I'm physically committing adultery with somebody else, and we don't even call it adultery today, right? We call it cheating. You know, we patronize the grave sin of adultery by calling it a different word like that, as if I'm cheating at a board game or something, or a test. But to be unfaithful, you know, like, my wife's body belongs to me. My body belongs to her. And we're in mutual submission to each other in love. And there are certain ways that I could act online or act with other people, let's say through, I don't know, blatant flirting or sexual talk or images or text or something like that, that would absolutely be an act of infidelity. And likewise, if my wife were to do that to me. This is why it's like the secular society has no idea how to attain the thing that it wants, because it doesn't know that God exists, or if it does, it refuses his authority. And it doesn't know what men are, women are, sex is, marriage is. We're all very confused about these things. But if we want to have any chance of any significant degree of happiness, we're going to have to return to God. In the Second Vatican Council, there's that fantastic line that says, when the creator is forgotten, the creature itself becomes unintelligible. In other words, like, we don't know what we are. And guess what? If you don't know what you are, you certainly don't know what you're for. And freedom means more than just freedom from restriction. It means freedom for something. If you only have freedom from restriction and you don't know what you're for, you're going to be miserable. I mean, look around the world today. How many people, right, that you know are under some serious physical restraint, right? And yet, their lives are, they'll say, meaningless, or they'll act as if they are. That's because they don't know what they are free for. Like, freedom exists for the sake of love. As Fulton Sheen once said, if you ever said to a taxi driver, hey there, are you free? And he says, yes, I am. And you said, hooray for freedom. That's a stupid thing to do. He is free in order to take you or another passenger, somewhere else. We need to get back to the truths of God revealed to us in his sacred
You
word.
cheated on him,
I think
and
once
he
you sat
cheated on
nude
you.
on Ben Affleck's lap, I think you've cheated on your husband.
I mean, it is fairly incredible how self-centered a society we've become when the entire pornography industry, which of course is based on the male sex drive, the idea is that women will participate in this, and then they will be offended that the male sex drive exists at the same time. So the idea is that just as when it comes to transgenderism, a person must be validated by you, right? My vision of myself must be validated by you. Now, women will pose nude, and if a man objectifies the nude woman, which is what men have done throughout human history when they see a nude woman, actually, which was originally.
Well, no. I mean, yes, I agree with what he's saying, but it's not the case that men will always objectify a nude woman, of course. And again, he's being hyperbolic. But again, we are our brother's keeper. If a woman dresses immodestly, do you know what St. Thomas Aquinas says about this? He says it's like she digs a pit and then covers it up for him to fall into. Yes, you are responsible. You are culpable in your brother's sin. Now, that does not mean that your brother is free to sin, right? It doesn't give any man the right to take advantage of a woman just because she doesn't know her dignity and doesn't act in a way that bespeaks the dignity that she does have, right? It's a manly thing to treat a woman who has forgotten her dignity with dignity nonetheless. And certainly Shapiro would agree with that. I'm not trying to take him to task there, but just a little nuance, I think.
The purpose of nudity. When that happens, then women get very offended. The male sex drive? No, you're supposed to see me as I see me, liberated and free. And it's like, well, no, you're making money off the fact that the male sex drive exists, but then you're objecting to it existing because you wish that it existed in the way that you see the male sex drive, which is yes. Utterly self-centered. It's not seeing yourself outside yourself at all. You're not like looking at who's the actual client, who's the paying customer on the other end. It's just I see my own freedom when I bare my breasts on TV. Right. But if a man objectifies me and he sees me only as a sex object, then I'm very upset about this.
There is this. I mean, we were talking about this before, but there is.
I mean, I've had to try to put the shoe on the other foot here. Like I've heard women say to me, and there's that famous quote that the darkest recesses of hell are reserved for men who play with women's hearts. Yeah, right. And I've had women say to me that there's these men and they flirt with them, they play with their heart, they lead them on, but they never have actually any intention of being with them romantically, much less engaging in an ongoing relationship with them. And suppose the man was like, no, that's just how I act. The woman would rightly say, well, you're wrong to act that way. Like what you're doing is disordered, right? And likewise, the man can look at the woman who dresses immodestly, who bears her chest on Instagram or something like that, and say, you're wrong to do this. Yes, but I mean it this way. It doesn't matter how you mean it. I mean, certainly intention matters, but some actions are intrinsically disordered. And this is one of them.
This big strain of reaction, even on the left, of women saying, I'm kind of miserable in this world. I'm kind of miserable treating myself and having other people treat me like this. And guys want to do things to me that I don't want them to do. And people tell me, well, now I'm not being sex positive. I mean, there is this kind of, there's this terrible headline I keep seeing that in spite of feminism, women are miserable.
Of course. What could be more enslaving than thinking that you have to take your clothes off to be heard? Like you could just comment on Brett Kavanaugh, but instead you have to take your top off because no one takes you seriously, and you know that. You don't take yourself seriously.
And you're right that they do.
It's all the joke. It is all the joke from Arrested Development. My eyes are up here, Michael. Yeah. Right? You've got the gal who is so obviously putting her breasts in Michael's face, and then he doesn't look. Yeah. But she wants him to look so bad, she repudiates him anyway. My eyes are up here. That's the whole thing.
There's a great video that was going around of this woman. She's a conservative, and she's wearing a 1950s housewife outfit, and then she's also wearing like the 2022 blue-haired MSNBC glasses outfit. And she's talking. It's supposed to be a conversation across time. And the 50s housewife is like, so, how's the future? Are you doing well? And she's like, yeah, everything's amazing over here. And the 50s housewife is like, so do you have any kids? She's like, no, I have no kids, but I have 3 cats. She's like, but you have an amazing boyfriend. She's like, no, I have no boyfriend, but I can have sex with whoever I want. She's like, that sounds terrible. Are you happy? She's like, well, I don't have kids. I could take a magic pill that gets rid of the kids, or I could just abort the kids. And she's like, well, yeah, but is this, in the end, is this making you feel more happy? She's like, well, I do have a pill that makes me happy. It's like,
it's a sad, satirical stab at the state of things today.
So we're going to go to Members Block, which is the brand new thing.
All right, so I think that might be it. But, wow, that was pretty good. It's good to see people addressing the problem of pornography like this. What is happiness, right? I read a whole book on this. Thomas Aquinas says that depends what you mean. When we talk about happiness, we can talk about it in an absolute sense or in a lesser sense. And he says that absolute fulfillment, if that's what you mean by happiness, cannot be had in this life. Which actually, I don't know about you, but it kind of allows me to take a deep breath. Like, oh gosh, I thought there was something wrong with me. Like, no, yeah, I mean, we've all had that experience, right? Where you're encountering something beautiful, maybe a sunset over a beach, or being intimate with your spouse, and you feel pain. And I think that pain is saying, what is it saying? It's almost like you want to enter into the beauty, have it swallow you, be completely taken up by it, but you can't be. So you and I were made for God. We will not experience God in what theologians call the beatific vision until heaven. So this is when we are going to be completely fulfilled. But he says that in this life we can experience a good degree of happiness by living according to the virtues. And this is just so true. I mean, that kind of example that was just kind of given there. It's like God desires us to have life and life to the full. And the world is calling us in one direction, promising us joy without sacrifice. And joy without sacrifice just leads to complete despair, I'm convinced, especially in the sexual realm, right? Like, you want your joy, you want your sexual love, you want marital love without sacrifice. That's pornography. That's what pornography does. It stands on the corner like a prostitute saying, like, nothing is required of you, you know. And you can get all the joys and fruits of marriage, but what ends up happening is, well, you know what happens if you've been involved in this. And this is why we need to return to Jesus Christ. We need to return to God's word, what he has to say. I mean, it's an oversimplification, I know, to call the Bible an instruction manual. And it certainly isn't written as an instruction manual, nor do I really mean it, but I'm kind of sort of being a little hyperbolic here. But like, if you want to know how to live, see how God tells you you should live, and you'll find that you're beginning to live in a far more beautiful way. Thank you very much for being here. If you haven't yet subscribed, click it, ring the bell. We also we got a lot of great content coming out over these next couple of weeks. So thanks for being here. God bless.